Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting next to me is Floki. Sitting across from me is Liam. How's it going, dude?
Yeah, good, mate. Enjoying a nice toasty bank holiday weekend here in the United Kingdom. That's a bit redundant for any listeners within the United Kingdom, but, you know, just to be inclusive.
For those not aware of the little old isle of Ingerland land, there is a week and a half to 2 week period in between March and April, where the weather suddenly becomes fantastic.
Yes.
And every year, every single Brit is fooled by this and goes, summer's here. It's going to be an early summer. It's going to be a fantastic year. Everything is bright and breezy and beautiful. And then a week and a half later, it goes back to the most unimaginable downpour of shite.
Absolutely, yep.
And that's what's happening at the moment. I found myself caught up in it today. I decided to go to the shops. And I thought, you know, I'm going to walk there. And I looked out the window. It was lovely and sunny and bright. It looked like a nice sunny day. I thought I'll just go in jeans and a t-shirt. And went down the road. No one told me about the ice cold Arctic wind that was blasting through.
As you say, every year you can set your clock to it.
2 minutes away from my house, I was regretting my decision massively. And then got to the shops, did what I had to do. On the way back, the wind had stopped, which meant I just sweat all the way home. So, yeah, that is the update of the weather in England. What's it like where you are?
If there are weather gods, ours definitely have a British sense of humour, don't they?
For definitely. What I love is we fall for it every year. Mm-hmm. Every year, all of a sudden, like every tattooed fat English man decides to sit outside a pub. Well, not at the moment, obviously, but it'll happen soon. And we just get completely bamboozled by the fact that the weather's nice. The weather's so nice.
Well, yeah, we're all pessimistic, cynical bastards, really, as a national trait. So I think it teeters at that slither of naive optimism that always gets crushed, inevitably.
What's that thing inside every cynic? You'll find a disappointed idealist.
Basically, yeah.
That is the British national character right there, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, well, let's kick off with some film news then. First thing I want to talk about this week. Warner Brothers have been cancelling a bunch of films.
They've been cancelling a bunch of films?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Why am I not aware of this?
It's supposed to be James Wan's The Trench, Ava DuVernay's New Gods, a load of quite a few DC Comics spin-offs have been cancelled by Warner Brothers, and no one's quite sure why, especially with all the hype at the moment with the Snyder Cut and DC. You would think DC would be a huge cash cow for them. That's the reason they're
pushing that as hard as possible.
Yeah, you would think, wouldn't you? But they seem to be paring down quite a bit on it. I don't know whether it's based on audience figures or what, or potential audience figures. But yeah, so quite a few people are getting their films cancelled, and there's been a lot of, not necessarily backlash, but a lot of quite disappointed people that have been working on this stuff. There's a few people some have been writing some of this stuff for like 3 years. And then I think everything was greenlit, and all of a sudden they've been cancelled right in their pre-production.
Oh, I'd be moderately fucked off.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, Warner Brothers is considered something of a movie titan, and movie titans behave in mysterious ways, I suppose.
Certainly do.
Another thing I've got here: Sony has announced April Fool's Day horror movie reboot. So, did you ever see April Fool's Day?
I know of it.
Yeah, it's a cult horror classic. Apparently, I haven't seen it either. But one of the things I love about this is they announced April Fool's Day reboot on the 1st of April, which was yesterday. And today is the 2nd of April, and no one can figure out if this was an actual April Fool's joke or whether they're actually going to go ahead with an April Fool's Day remake. There's sort of a meta upon meta upon meta layer going on here that no one can quite get behind.
I don't want to sound edgy, but from the heart, I actually think that as an April Fool's joke, that's quite fucking lame.
Yeah. It's a bizarre marketing decision because it seems like the obvious thing to do until you think about it for more than 5 seconds and realize this is just going to confuse people everywhere as to whether this is actually a real thing.
Yeah, because probably don't you think it's because most people are going to be going, oh, they're remaking that film that I'd never even heard of.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a big one, is it?
Yeah, no, it's an odd pick, I think. But this is apparently going to be released on April the 1st, 2022. So this time next year. Like I said, I didn't watch the original. I have no idea if this is something to be anticipated for, but there does seem to be a bit of hype about it on the interwebs at the moment.
Fair enough. Not that I've seen, but I suppose I'm just not looking in the right places.
Well, each week, Liam, I try and find some film news that you're going to be actually excited about. And I think I've got a piece this week. I think you're going to like this one.
Do go on.
This is Netflix has reportedly dropped big money to acquire 2 sequels to Rian Johnson's Oscar-nominated 2019 mystery film, Knives Out.
Oh, yes. No, I have been hearing things about this.
Yeah, well, Rian Johnson's been threatening sequels to this for a while because he loves the character Benoit Blanc. You reviewed Knives Out way back, probably as probably like episode 2 or 3 that we ever did.
Yeah, it was like late 2019 when we began recording.
Absolutely loved it. Me being me, I caught up with it quite recently and absolutely adored that film. I thought it was fantastic. I'm a huge fan of like the Poirot murder mystery stuff, and I just thought Knives Out was beautifully well written, beautifully well performed, and I wanted more of it. So the fact that Netflix has picked it up for, let me just get the figure here, 450 million for 2 sequels.
Damn.
Yeah, so proper money. And I like Netflix's instincts on this one because I thought that was such a successful film, and it's got so much mileage for being the modern day Poirot.
And Daniel Craig is returning, yeah?
Johnson will direct with Daniel Craig returning as Inspector Blanc. And this is apparently one of the largest acquisitions that Netflix has ever made. So yeah, this is Netflix sort of moving into the film franchise world, really, because they've been doing one-offs and buying the rights to individual films, but they seem really to be on board with jumping on this as an ongoing series kind of thing, and they want the exclusivity.
Definitely intriguing. I mean, if they can hold a candle to the first film, then that's definitely something to get excited about.
Yeah, for sure. Apparently, Knives Out was made for $40 million, and it grossed $311.4 million in worldwide ticket sales. So it did extremely well, which is very good to hear.
Can't say I'm surprised.
And you can watch it on Amazon Prime in the UK as well. So obviously, Prime thought there was something in it. And I'm happy. I'm genuinely happy about that. I could watch, if there's going to be that level of quality and that level of writing, I could watch 1 million of those. I'd be
absolutely.
a very, very happy boy indeed. So yes, are you excited? Have I found a good one?
I'm curious.
Oh, God damn it. One of these days I'm going to read you out a piece of news and you're going to be like, yeah.
Maybe.
All right, how about this one then? District 9 director Neil Blomkamp's secret horror film Demonic has found a home at IFC Midnight. With this acquisition, Blomkamp's next feature has secured an official release date, which is going to be August 20th of this year. And we're finally learning some major casting and synopsis details. So I believe that he shot this during the lockdown period. And it was a super secretive set. So that it's created quite a lot of mystique around this production. And yeah, I was a big fan of District 9. I know it's a film that you really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, District 9 is very good.
So the cast includes Carly Pope, Chris William Martin, and Michael Rogers. And the official synopsis is, in Demonic, a young woman unleashes terrifying demons when supernatural forces at the root of a decades-old rift between mother and daughter are ruthlessly revealed in this horror thriller from director Neil Blomkamp. So
sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those, fit it on the back of a cereal box quotes kind of thing. It doesn't really reveal much. But yeah, I get the hype for this. I think he's a really, really talented director. And that whole mystique that it's been creating around itself, I think is kind of, it's going to be a shame if it's a disappointment, but I like that kind of sort of meta marketing kind of thing when it works well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But as you say, I just think 9 times out of 10, it never seems to deliver when they go for that kind of advertising strategy. There may be many examples where it does like deliver in the eyes of fans and critics widely, but I'm just a cynical pessimist. As we said earlier, it's a British trait, so I just like to think that most of the times they try and do something like that, the finished product never lives up to it.
I'll be interested to see what you make of this one, because I know you like the director, I know you like your horror.
Well, that's the thing. I like Neil Blomkamp, and the synopsis that you just laid out there does pique my interest, vague as it is.
I can't believe no one's done the film title Demonic before.
Has that never happened?
Well, you would presume, seeing as far as I know, yeah, it's just demonic. I swear that should be used, but yeah, apparently not.
Very strange.
A little short film news here. We never really cover short films, actually. Perhaps we should do more of them. And by short film, I mean really, really short.
3 minutes long?
Yeah, something like that. This is created by the animal rights group Humane Society International, which is the HSI, and it will release Save Ralph for viewing across its social media platforms. Created as part of the hashtag Save Ralph global campaign to end animal testing, the documentary-style film features a puppet named Ralph, who's voiced by celebrated New Zealand director Taika Waititi, who's a rabbit who's lost sight in one eye and hearing in one ear after undergoing animal testing. Interviewed by comedian Ricky Gervais, Ralph divulges his life as a lab animal and the effect it has had on him and his family. Other A-list celebrities, including Zac Efron, Olivia Munn, Trisha Heffler, and Pom Clementif, lend their voices to supporting roles in Save Ralph. The 3-minute star-studded stop-motion animation film is written and produced by filmmaker Spencer Susser filmed by British cinematographer Tristan Oliver and animated by industry giant Tobias Foraker, who are known for their Wes Anderson stuff.
I saw something about this on Twitter not so long ago. It was actually Ricky Gervais tweeting about his participation in this, and I saw a still from this short film. So yes, sounds like it's something worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, only 3 minutes long. It's got to be worth doing, isn't it? But it's interesting how many celebrities are throwing their weight behind this.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a very noble and necessary endeavor.
Yeah, I'm not part of the whole vegan movement, all that kind of stuff, but I do I'm massively against animal cruelty and animal testing as well. I think that's, as you said, that seems like a worthy cause. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether it's effective or whether it's, I don't know whether it's going for shock value or what, but it's certainly getting a lot of hype anyway.
Definitely one for the list.
Here's an actor/musician we haven't heard from in a while, Iggy Pop.
Oh yes, Iggy.
Yeah, he has joined the cast of Canadian director Jeremy Lalonde's upcoming comedy film Blue Iguana. The godfather of punk, whose first band was called the Iguanas, which led to his nickname Iggy, will star as Edward, the wealthy patriarch whose death kicks off a chain of unfortunate events for son Daniel, whose plan to reconnect with his siblings hits a snag when he discovers they all want to kill him for his inheritance. Other names set to star in the film include Bob Saget, Joel David Moore, Jason Jones, Charlie Chaikin, and Mary Lynn Raskob. We haven't seen Iggy Pop in anything for a long time, other than some really dodgy, I think it's TripAdvisor or something like that. He's on some adverts on British TV at the moment. There's a horrible bit where he's talking about, there's a load of people running along a beach in this advert, and you've got Iggy Pop's like laconic voiceover, man. And he's like, what a year that was. One day, though, one day soon, we can all be back at the beach. And what I hate about that advert is I know, because he said it in interviews a lot, that Iggy Pop's house, which is this huge multi-million-pound mansion, is on the beach. Iggy Pop's been on the beach the whole fucking time during lockdown, man. Yeah, he's telling the rest of us, like, one day you can be on the beach like me. I can do it now because I'm rich. It really annoys me every time I see it. It really winds me up.
Well, consumers love nothing more than having their fucking noses rubbed in shit, man. So.
Well, here's the other interesting thing about this film. It's a dark comedy, and it's currently being shot in the Cayman Islands.
Okay.
Now, whenever I hear the term Cayman Islands, my first thought is tax write-off.
Yeah, money laundering, stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's a multi-picture production deal between Canadian firm Productivity Media and US company Darius Films, who I presume, the Cayman Islands, obviously it's a picturesque location. And I get why, so this guy's a multimillionaire, he dies, his son gets the inheritance. That all makes sense to do it in like a high-value locale. Picking the Cayman Islands suggests to me that there's some Hollywood accounting going on here. And, I don't want to get us in any legal trouble or anything. I'm only saying it suggests.
Just speculating.
I'm not accusing anybody.
Yeah, you have the freedom to speculate.
If I told you I had a bank account in the Cayman Islands, you'd immediately think, what kind of dodgy scheme are you up to?
I would cock my eyebrow and go, why?
Yeah. Also involved, and here's where it gets dodgier, the Cayman Islands Film Commission, the Cayman's Ministry of International Trade, Investment, Aviation and Maritime Affairs, and DART Enterprises, which sounds like a shell company if I've ever heard one. So there's a lot of sort of weird, mysterious background going on here with this. Somebody's moving money somewhere. But whether the film will be any good, I like Iggy Pop as an actor. I love him as a musician, but I think he's a great actor as well.
He was the only thing I liked about the Crow City of Angels.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
When he turns up as Curve, who's like one of the scumbag gang. Everyone else in that, I thought Iggy Pop was great in it, but literally everyone else was shockingly bad. And this is a film that has an Ian Drury cameo in it. So they made a film about the character Curve, Iggy Pop's character. I think I'll be interested in that.
I'm kind of desperate to see this to work out. I wonder if by watching it we'll get a sense of whether this is a genuine creative piece of art or whether it's just there to hide some financial dealings. I think often with that kind of thing you're able to tell. There's certainly some productions, like Russian productions and things that we've reviewed on the podcast where you look at it and think, it's got such a weird narrative and such weird casting that there has to be some kind of tax deal going on here, But yeah, we'll give it a watch. But I'd like to see the return of Iggy Pop at the very least.
I'm definitely curious to see it because of him helming it essentially, or at least being a focal character. It sounds
a little bit reminiscent of Knives Out, weirdly.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So yeah, it's billed as a dark comedy. So yeah,
somebody may be cashing in on Knives Out with an Iggy Pop.
If it turns out the next Benoit Blanc film is in the Cayman Islands, we know something really has gone gone interesting in the
I wouldn't
financial
mind seeing
world.
Daniel Craig facing off against Iggy Pop. That'd be quite intriguing.
You got to do something with that Bond money, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's enough film news for this week. Let's get on with the show. As usual, Liam has got a couple of reviews to start out with. What are we going for first?
So I've been doing a bit more rummaging around on Shudder, and I came across a recent release. This was released on VOD on 25th of March, and this is one called Violation. It's co-written and co-directed by Madeline Sims-Fewer and Dusty Manicelli, and Madeline Sims-Fewer also happens to be the star of the film as well. And she is a young English lady named Miriam, who is journeying with her husband Caleb, played by Obi Abili, to the Quebec countryside to visit her sister Greta and Greta's husband Dylan. These are respectively played by Jesse Levercombe and Anna Maguire. And on the way there, we are essentially become privy to the fact that Miriam and Caleb do not have a good marriage. They don't really talk to each other. Atmosphere is very frosty. Something seems to have gone wrong somewhere, a heavy personality clash. And when they get to Greta and Dylan's abodes, the latter couple they just couldn't be happier. They have a wonderful relationship. They're always bantering and teasing and flirting and they just clearly revel in one another's company. And this bliss is something that seems to be quite a sore spot for the sisters. It manages to ignite a lot of dormant friction between them. And also, Dylan, the Canadian, happens to be childhood friends with the main character, Miriam. So they are actually quite close. Essentially, the first sort of half of the film it could be adequately described as a sort of late 20s, early 30s, mumblecore, relationships going wrong, sort of art house drama. But then in the middle of the film, it gets very messed up because one night, Miriam is pouring her heart out to Dylan beside a campfire and things get a bit inappropriate. They both kiss one another and there's a fumbling apology. Oh, Jesus, sorry about that. They laugh it off. But then they fall asleep by the campfire and Miriam wakes up to find Dylan on top of her. He's raping her. And the film then deals in non-linear fashion with the trauma that she suffers after the event and the extremely brutal revenge that she takes on Dylan. And that's essentially about as much setup as I can give.
Okay.
Now, Violation's really interesting because there's a lot of stuff about this film that I think makes it as successful as a piece. It's the stuff that is cemented in my memory and made me think it's largely an impressive piece of work. For a start, the cinematography by Adam Crosby is absolutely brilliant. It's all filmed in rural Quebec as it's set, and it's just absolutely gorgeous locale, really, really full, crisp, panoramic, immersive, just gorgeous environment taking place in the film. And there's a really, really great soundtrack as well. It contrasts between sort of lovely, dreamy shots of nature that just make you feel like you're sort of applicating on a gorgeous day in the meadows, and then it switches sharply to freaky time-lapsed footage and Shining-esque sound. It has this wonderfully unsettling juxtaposition, very jarring between the way that the lens actually captures nature, and it goes down a really, really interesting route with the characterization of Miriam, because you think with rape and revenge films, typically they follow the structure of woman is attacked, woman tries to get herself together with the horrendous trauma that she inevitably suffers, and then the third part is she goes after the piece of shit or pieces of shit who did this to her.
It's an interesting narrative timeline there. So it saves the pivotal moment of the film for right in the middle, you said.
Yes. Well, the thing with the narrative of Violation is that it's non-linear. So there's a lot of stuff that takes place, like, for example, without giving too much away, I mean, the film sort of ends. It ends in it's a weird way to describe it, because it ends on a point that would make sense as the ending point if it were written linearly, and yet not. Okay. And this is where great acting. I really loved all the performances. I thought they were very convincing, because, as I said, the first portion of this film starts off very much as what you'd call a mumblecore film, and I found the acting authentic to the point where I was sitting there sort of in the brace position because there are moments of dialogue that are so believably delivered and so uncomfortable, the tension and the hostility. I was just like, oh God, this is fucking awkward. And it did that really, really well, very convincing. All of that is really powerful. The only problems I have with Violation, and they're problems that stopped it from being really great to me, because I was watching it thinking this is a work that's really sort of, I'm really drinking it in and it's really sucking me in. This feels like this is going to be one that I remember and will be distinct. But there are certain things that make, it's sort of start detaching the cart from the horse a little bit, because the time jumps, they get to a point where they become utterly fucking confusing, because Miriam engineers an act of retribution, but it's one that sort of, as far as I'm concerned, leaves the viewer a bit squiff in regards to how she's able to do what she's doing without any exterior perturbance. And I mentioned that her character is Miriam and Caleb. Their marriage is fraught with tension, and it looks like it's very much moribund. Never really explains why. And what Miriam ends up doing, this kind of catastrophic, life-changing act that she embarks upon in reaction to what's been done to her, doesn't really incorporate her husband or her sisters. The aftermath doesn't seem to incorporate their reaction to it. And I thought, well, I think that's very strange to introduce characters who are of such focal importance in the principal character's life, if there's going to be absolutely no reactive elements, narrative developments to the thing that's the crux of the film. I thought that was a bit weird. The conclusion is, all I'll basically say is that it references Titus Andronicus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In a way that I know that they were sort of aiming for a sort of poetic climax there. But to me, it felt very ill-fitted to the film. I thought, this is like ridiculous. Miriam is presented as an ambiguously narcissistic character. Her sister, because there is a point where she tells her sister, oh, I woke up and your husband was on top of me. And her sister's like, oh, you've always been a fucking narcissist and a pathological liar. And you always, you act like you're some saint who always gets tricked into doing bad things. So there is an ambiguous portrait of Miriam throughout the film, essentially as somebody who maybe isn't one to invest trust in or take for her word, because it's alleged that she has a history of being manipulative and essentially lying and causing trouble for her own narcissistic fuel. So, and it does tread that ambiguity very, very nicely. But yeah, when it reaches the denouement, if you like, of her act, of the focal act, I just think, well, this is just a bit, this doesn't ring true. I know her character has had some problematic elements, and she's maybe not as nice of a person as she presents, but this is like as if she was a character out of a fucking Thomas Harris novel. And I just didn't think that fit very well. So largely, Violation is a worthy film because it looks great, it sounds great, the acting is great, and it does do something fresh and original and interesting with the rape and revenge narrative device, if you like. But it comes apart at the seams. It's a shame that it comes apart at the seams, because I was really, really invested and I was loving everything about it. But I just thought, if only they'd done more of this. If only they'd done, there was just another way where they could have made the exploration of this a little bit more substantive, or had a conclusion that was a bit less ludicrous, I would say. Then it would have been a really, really solid art house, horror, drama, whatever you want to call it. But as it stands, it's mostly a very good one with glaringly annoying setbacks.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So would I say watch it? Yes, I would. I would say watch it, but I have warned you about moments in the film that could have been done better.
Okay. And very dark subject matter as well. I mean,
extremely dark, and it must
doesn't sound like it's going to be an easy watch.
No, it's not an easy
films
watch.
Need to be, but you know what I mean.
But it is like, for the most part, what they've done with the structure, it is intelligence, and it is an interesting and refreshing way of depicting women who have suffered this horrible crime, because it does have complexity. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of nuance, and a lot of moral grey area. Those are things about that I think the film did very well, and those are that's an aspect of the film that makes it stand out. So the creative team behind Violation are clearly they're skilled people. They're very good writers and actors. They know what they're doing. They seem to get a little bit overconfident with how how much or how little they'd be able to get away with in regards to certain elements. But it's mostly pretty damn cool.
That's cool. That's quite an intriguing review, actually. Yeah. You've piqued my interest with that one.
And it's also just as a prior warning for anyone, depending on what your tolerance and attention span is, it is a fucking slow burner. There are lots and lots of lines of extended dialogue. But I didn't mind that at all. In fact, that actually helped contribute towards the authentication. It just made the characters made the atmosphere feel more lived in, and it made the characters feel more believable to me. But I have come across people going, "Oh God, it's fucking 15-minute scene. These people just talking and talking and talking." So, okay, well, I can tolerate that if it's.
Never see a play.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just people talking at each other, man.
Be at home watching Heat on DVD. And, okay, next up is another Shudder original. This came out on I believe it was the 5th of March. This is one called Lucky. Now, this isn't very good at all. So
okay, TV of the week.
Yes, directed by Natasha Kamani, and this is written by and starring Brea Grant. So, in similarity to Violation, it stars the person who wrote it, or in terms of Violation, the person who co-wrote it. But yes, this stars Brea Grant as May Ryer. Now, May is a young woman who makes her living as an author of self-help books and self-business tutelage, basically how to become a successful woman. It's self-help guides written from something of a feministic perspective with some helpful therapeutic lessons, and she's making a lot of money off that, but she's having trouble with, she's getting rejections from her publisher, and I think things are a little bit uneasy with her husband, Ted, because it's essentially there's some friction in their marriage that I won't give away the reason for it in case you guys want to watch it. Well, one night, May and Ted they're at home chilling out, and they go to bed, and May is woken by a noise, and she goes downstairs and she turns on the light and looks out the back door of the house and sees a man standing at the bottom of the garden with a very strange diaphanous mask. And she goes, "Ugh," and then runs upstairs and said, "Ted, there's a man outside." And her husband, Ted, replies, "Yeah, that's the man." What? So that's the man who comes to our house every night and tries to kill us.
Okay.
She's like, okay. And so they go downstairs.
Just another day in the neighborhood.
Yeah. And Ted arms himself, I believe, with a golf club, and she gets a knife. And they go downstairs, and the man's creeping around inside the house. And Ted hits him really fucking hard with the golf club across the head. Guy falls to the floor. May picks up the phone to call the police, and they discover that the man is gone. And this is something that happens every single night, repetitively, over the course of about an hour and 40 minutes, with some punctuations of a complete lack of help from local authorities or people in her life who care about her.
So ironically, she's very unlucky.
Yes. Well, I mean, the title "Lucky" comes from, essentially, this is a feministic parable.
Okay. Oh,
And
right. Okay, I see.
The title "Lucky" comes from, there are several moments in the film where May strikes it hot with a publishing company who wants to take her on. And her agent says, like, "You're very lucky, you're really lucky that they, in this kind of climate that they want to see." And she's just like, "I am not lucky. I worked my fucking ass off for this. It's not luck. It's not put hard work." And so, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's talking about basically the use of the word lucky in the context of undermining women.
Right, so she's not being selected for her talent and ability. It's more if a woman's going to make it as a a writer or a creative person.
Essentially, she's lucky.
They must be lucky rather than good.
When she calls,
I get it. Okay,
when she calls the police And the detective who takes a statement of her says, you know, you're lucky to sort of survive to this guy. You know, like it's used the word lucky in the pejorative. The problem with this film is that I actually thought the synopsis sounded really, really intriguing, but it's a movie that doesn't seem to know what it wants to be, because it starts out as a horror, atmospherically, with regards to the score and the pacing. It starts out very much as a horror, and then it just drastically becomes really heavy-handed and horribly on the nose social satire with really bad dialogue and inane repetitions of the same thing over and over again. And I know that they're trying to drive home a point, but I don't think it's a point that's very well made, because you have the Ted, the character of Ted, who is May's husband. Him and several other characters. There's moments in the film where they blankly look at May and go, "This is just the way things are now," and it's just it does not seem to be able to make its mind up at all about whether it wants to be a horror film or if it wants to be a satire, because it clumsily walks a tightrope and it hits the sound. I mean, it doesn't. It's not actually scary at all, so it fails in terms. It's not scary. It's not even eerie or unsettling. I didn't think so. It completely fails on the horror mark right out of the gate. And yeah, as I say, the satirical quotient of the film is just really, really misjudged. I wasn't convinced by it. I thought it became far too surrealistic, and it thought it was trying to be clever, but it came across as very, sixth form playish. You know, written by a kind of sort of in this written by an ideologue who's never really been out in the big wide world. And a lot of people are going to be listening to this and going like, "Oh, well, you're a fucking misogynistic prick." No, not at all. Not at all. Women are perfectly capable of making some amazing fucking things. I can reel off loads of their names for you right now. But it's just this film, the message that it's trying to convey, it does not convey it well. Cool idea, not well executed. Because none of the characters were, I was about to say rootable then, but that's an Australian term for fuckable.
Yeah.
So like, none of the characters, okay, sympathetic.
You don't get on any of the characters' sides.
Yeah, so I just found them all very monotonous and exasperating, and there was nothing about them that.
And that's not an intentional thing. That's a failure of the writing.
I believe it's a failure of the writing. Yeah, I mean, I just think that I'm not entirely sure how they sat in the editing room and thought, yeah, this is good to go. I just don't understand why, especially with some of the rote verbal musings that come out of the mouths of so many of the characters. There's a weird moment in the film where she's consulted by a paramedic who finds her injured at one point, and then when he's stitching her up in the living room, a rape crisis counsellor comes into the room, and I think a lawyer comes into the room, and a reporter goes, and they all start talking to her simultaneously. And it's meant to be a moment of, sort of unsettling and overwhelming replication of the kind of, interrogative and unhelpful barrage that women endure when they report being sexually assaulted.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't watch that and think, I like what they're doing there. I just thought this film is too up its arse for its own good. It thinks it's doing something really clever, but it's not. It's just it comes across as smug and empty, and it's very boring. And I don't think that it does. I don't think that it serves women in any decent or memorable way at all. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Just as a quick aside, it seems like you're getting good mileage out of your Shudder subscription. Again, we're not being paid by them, but are you finding good content on there? Are you enjoying it?
Oh, Shudder's largely really cool.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think it's a worth. It's basically just Netflix.
Really does sound like we're advertising, but I'm genuinely curious.
Genuinely not.
Yeah.
I wish, fucking hell, if I was being paid by Shudder, I wouldn't be working in a bullshit retailer.
Nor would you be slating their films.
No. Absolutely. No. Shudder is essentially Netflix, but just with much darker and nastier and things that make you go, ooh, stuff on it.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying it, most certainly.
A cool little subversion of the streaming market. I quite like the concept.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Yet to try it myself.
Shudder's good. Shudder is good. I wasn't actually aware that, because I thought it was exclusive to North America, but then I found out that you can actually, there is a Shudder UK, and I didn't know that for such a long time.
Take note, HBO Max.
Yes. But yeah, no, so Violation is decent and worth a watch, and Lucky is a terrible waste of time.
Okay, fair enough. Nice and conclusive. I like it. Okay, TV of the week then. A couple of things to talk about, as I always say, unless there's 3 things to talk about, in which case I say there's 3 things to talk about this week. But this week there's 2. So I'm doing 2, okay?
Oh, so we don't get a surprise third?
No. I don't have a surprise third this week, nor do I have a docu-series. Shock and horror.
Oh, wow, okay.
I know, right?
This is weird.
Just when you think you got us down pat, we swiftly move. We move like Muhammad Ali, you know?
Like shifty bastards.
Shifty bastards. Yeah, that could be the alternative podcast.
Yeah, shifty bastards.
CINEMENTALIST, subtitle, Shifty Bastards. Yeah. No, I got a couple of things to talk about. First thing, it's been creating a lot of waves at the moment, which immediately pricked up my ears. This is called Resident Alien. Are you aware of this?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
So this is a science fiction mystery comedy drama. That really rolls off the tongue, that one, doesn't it? Based on the comic book of the same name by Peter Hogan and Steve Parkhouse. This is based on it's the Dark Horse.
Dark Horse comics.
Yeah.
Premiered
on January 27th of this year on Sci-Fi, as in, yes, SYFY. Now, we've often been quite down on the Sci-Fi channel because some of their original content is pretty rubbish.
It's also hilarious.
Yeah.
I find it hilarious.
Good late night stuff. But then back when they were Sci-Fi, SCIFI, they did a lot of the sort of B-movie stuff.
Yeah, man, that I used to stay up really late when I was in primary
and that was fun, wasn't
watching that, and it scarred my brain considerably.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can really think of recent sci-fi stuff that is now not on Sci-Fi anymore that's really good is The Expanse. But they did the classic sci-fi thing of abandoning it and giving it to Amazon instead, or rather, Amazon having to rescue what was possibly one of their only really genuinely good shows. But anyway, let me go on with Resident Alien. So let's do the setup for this one. This opens with a couple of police officers in the woods of Colorado. And they're at this picturesque, beautiful little house right by a lake. And they're knocking on the door, trying to get to the owner inside. And they look at each other and go, oh, yeah, where is he? Like, he's got to be somewhere around here. And one of them looks out to the lake and goes, I think he's fishing. So the camera pans out to this little boat in the middle of the lake with a figure on it, fishing in the distance. The camera zooms up to the back of this figure. The figure turns around, and it is not a human being. It's an alien in a fishing boat. Dun, dun, dun.
And you mean as in like a typical grey?
Yeah, like a grey. So you got the big black eyes, you got the sort of elongated head, and so you got sort of a reveal moment where it turns around, you get a profile shot, and it's not a person in a fishing hat, it's an alien. So you get credit sequence rolls. And then we go back to these cops, and the owner of this boat, the alien in the boat, has come onto dry land. And you see a shot of the feet as it approaches these police officers, and the camera pans up to reveal that the alien no longer looks like an alien. It looks exactly like Alan Tudyk.
I know Alan Tudyk.
Yes, or Alan Tudyk. I'm never quite sure.
I know who you mean, though. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball.
Yes. So rather than standing in front of them is the alien that you saw in the intro, he now looks like an ordinary human being. In fact, he looks like the person these police officers are looking for, which is Dr. Harry Vanderspiegel. And the reason they want, great name, right? The reason they want to talk to him is because there's a small town nearby that the doctor there has been murdered. And so the only nearby doctor is Dr. Harry Vanderspiegel, who is out at his cabin in the woods, and they want to bring him into town to perform an autopsy and try and find out what happened to their one and only doctor. We then cut to a flashback sequence. They got some nice voiceover at this point with Alan Tudyk. I'm going to go with Tudyk from this point onwards.
I think it might be Tudyk.
It might be Tudyk. Yeah, we'll go with Tudyk. Alan Tudyk does a nice voiceover at this point as the alien, explaining through flashback what has happened. So it turns out this alien was flying down to Earth in his spaceship in order to drop a mysterious device on Earth. His ship got caught in a lightning storm and plunged into the ground. And this alien then wanders around America for a while, trying to find somewhere to fit in, until he eventually comes across this lake house in Colorado. Dr. Harry Vanderspiegel, the owner of this cabin, chilling on his couch, he's asleep. He hears a noise outside, he wakes up, and the doors are mysteriously open. So he grabs a poker from the fire and is wandering around the house looking for a potential intruder when all of a sudden he is confronted by this gigantic wandering alien. He freaks out and bashes the alien right across the head with a poker, which causes the alien to murder him in most vicious fashion and dump his body into the lake. The alien got a good look at Dr. Harry van der Spiegel and metamorphosizes in this sort of quite reminiscent of American Werewolf in London, metamorphosizes into an exact copy of Dr. Harry. And then we got a lovely bit where it's like a montage sequence of this alien with this really funny voiceover as well. This alien now getting to learn how to use a human body. He learns English by watching old episodes of Law and Order. So you got these great shots of him sitting in front of the TV and initially speaking nonsense and gradually playing the same line over and over again until he gets a bead on it. We cut back to the police officers and they're now taking Harry into town to investigate this potential murder of the town doctor. And he considers this a test because he's been living out in the woods all this time. He hasn't had to interact with human beings before, but he's a very, very intelligent alien. He regards human beings as being lower than lizards on the intelligence scale. To him, this is a facet of how stupid humans are, is that they think they're intelligent, whereas on the galactic scale, actually, lizards are better off. So, Floki, this is a call out for you, right? So anyway, Harry van der Spiegel is actually now very excited because the only real experience of human life he's had is watching reruns of Law and Order. And all of a sudden, he's been given a murder mystery. So he's got this genuine sort of buzz about him that I get to, what you mean, you want me to cut open a human being? And you want me to solve a mystery case? This is brilliant. This is just like what I've been watching on TV. And so he begins the autopsy and he begins to settle into this life in town. He meets Sarah Tomko as she's playing Asta 12 Trees, a Native American woman who was working as the chief nurse for this doctor that's been murdered. She considers him very odd and bizarre and they don't get on very well at first. But she quickly seems to think that he must be sort of a savant. Like he's got something of the, she's sort of like a Dr. Watson to his mad autistic Sherlock Holmes. And she gradually starts to learn that although he is incredibly socially inept, because I mean, he's a fucking alien, but she can't see that actually he's extremely good at his job, but he's a very interesting person. And she had a lot of love for the doctor that was there previously. So she begins to help him in his inquiries. Mayor of the town, Ben Hawthorne, he's a young dude. It's a small town. He's only just been elected. And he's more than happy that this savant doctor, although he's very weird and has just turned up, he's very happy that there is a doctor in the town at the very least. So he immediately makes him the resident doctor of the town, hence resident alien. There's another wrinkle in that the mayor's son, Max Hawthorne, has a weird genetic quirk that means he's one of the very few people that when he looks at Harry, he doesn't see Harry, he sees the alien. His disguise doesn't work on this kid. So you got this kid in town that nobody believes who, when he looks at Harry, he actually sees the alien in the full makeup wandering around in human clothes. And he is determined at this point to let the town know, to alert the police. Nobody believes him because he's just a kid, but he can see through the disguise. So, I mean, you know, it's tempting to say, stop me if you've heard this before, because there's been a million pieces of media about an alien crash landing on Earth and becoming, disguising themselves as a human and attempting to integrate with society. You immediately think of things like Third Rock from the Sun, and K-Pax and all this kind of stuff. It's a really, really old trope. Let me tell you something, man. This show is quite possibly the best thing I've seen all year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really, really brilliantly done. For a start, it's really funny. Really, really funny. But it's not a sitcom. So all those Third Rock from the Sun comparisons kind of go out the window immediately because that was brilliant and everyone loved John Lithgow's performance in that and everything. But that was a straight up play for laughs. Resident Alien is really funny, but it balances out its laughs. What I was expecting here when I first started watching it, because it's got a lot of the funny stuff loaded fairly early on, I was expecting sort of a flat out comedy. What I was really surprised to find is that although it's really sharp and witty and incisive, and it made me laugh out loud in just about every episode multiple times, it's actually got a lot of things going on. It's got a certain darkness to it. It's also got some emotional beats in there. A lot of the characters around Harry have very flawed lives. The nurse that I talked about earlier, she's got an abusive ex-husband. She has a very complicated relationship with her father. She also had to give away a baby when she was younger. There's a lot of very, very dark things that you wouldn't initially expect to appear in something that starts out this funny and this flippant. I mean, the idea itself just lends itself to comedy. You go the literal fish out of water story.
Yeah.
Alien wandering around, being socially inept. Obviously, there's a load of mileage for humor there. This has got a load of old ideas in it. The interesting thing is that the show has its blinkers on in that regard. It kind of ignores the fact that so many pieces of media have done this concept before, completely and utterly ignores it. And so these old ideas that a lot of different pieces of media have played with in this show's hands feels really fresh and alive and exciting. When it wants to be funny, it's really, really funny. When it wants to be dark, it's very dark. And when it wants to be emotional, it actually is quite heartbreaking at points. It's beautifully well shot. One of the things sci-fi gets criticized for a lot is not throwing enough budget at their productions. So the sets end up looking a bit ropey. They don't necessarily get in the greatest actors or anything like that. I'm telling you, this can compete with anything that HBO has done. It can compete with anything out there at the moment, the way it looks. The practical effects and CGI effects for the alien, when you do see him as an alien and when you see him as Harry and there's bits where he's trying to find his spaceship. There is CGI stuff in there. It looks movie level quality. The cinematography is fantastic. You're out in the small town in Colorado. You got a lot of him going out into the wilderness trying to find pieces of his ship. You've got the woods around. You've got this lake house that he's based out of. All looks flat out stunning. This show really, really surprised me. I thought it was going to be good. I knew it had a good reputation, but this is a level of class that I wasn't expecting and haven't seen the Sci-Fi Channel do before. This is, to me, stands up there with some of the best TV I've seen. It really genuinely does. And I'm so pleased with it. It's got punch to it. It's got a little bit of a punk attitude to it. It knows how to time its comedy. It knows how to balance that with dark themes. And it knows how to balance that with emotional beats that, because you were laughing away 5 minutes ago, when it does do a deep, dark and emotional story and then suddenly flips back to jokes again, that could so easily be this discordant mess. And yet in this show's hands, it's actually beautifully balanced and works perfectly the whole way through. I really, really like Resident Alien. It is honestly one of the best things I've seen in a very long time.
It's a limited series, is it?
So 10 episodes. It actually just got picked up last month. Actually, it was April 2nd today. Got picked up at the end of March for the second season.
Oh, wow.
Because it's doing really, really well in the ratings. And believe me, having seen it is not hard to see why. It's got something for everyone, this. It's really easy watching. It's great fun. And yet there's a lot more depth to it than you expect. And that actually pulls you even further into it than you were initially expecting to go. It's a real surprise, this thing. And I think it's a remarkable piece of work. It's such a ballsy, fresh, powerful piece of work that at the same time manages to be huge amounts of fun and entertainment for its audience. And that's a very difficult trick to pull off. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend this.
Damn, I mean, it's
anybody.
weird. It doesn't. Before like your review, I hadn't actually seen a deluge of people posting about this on any social media. But
yeah, it's sort of. I think it's sort of worked its way through the back channels when it first came out, and as the series has gone on, because of the quality of the thing, I think a lot of people were preparing to write this off. I mean, comic book adaptation, alien comes to Earth. I don't know. I think people weren't necessarily expecting that much from it. Like, oh, that might be good. And that was sort of my attitude going into, this might be good. Let's give it a chance. I wasn't expecting to find sort of, I don't know, like a Breaking Bad quality show, but with such a silly concept that actually works so beautifully well. It's way, way better than the synopsis would make it appear. And I love that. It's my surprise of the year so far. I think it's just a superbly accomplished piece of work.
Very cool.
Second thing I want to talk about this week is a comedy series. Well, was a comedy series because unfortunately it was cancelled after season 3. And I'm about to explain why. This was for Comedy Central and it's called Another Period. This is created by Natasha Leggero and Ricky Lindhorn. And it was a lot of the same people that did Drunk History are involved in this.
Yeah.
And it's set around the what was referred to in American history as the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age moving on to the next period, which is the Progressive Age. So you're talking 1900-ish. So this is going from the old school American attitude. So the Gilded Age was when America as a country overtook the UK in terms of financial wealth, in terms of industrial capacity, in terms of just developing as a country. And the progressive age, which is where this show is going into, was when you had things like the temperance movement and a lot of societal changes, right on the cusp of that really interesting point in American history. But it is a flat-out comedy, because what this is trying to do is parody reality TV like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, except it's doing it in a Gilded Age, progressive age, American history setting. Very much the same way Drunk History played with that sort of thing. So this is charting the fictional Bellacourt family. Natasha Leggero plays Lillian Bellacourt, and Ricky Lindhorn plays Beatrice, her sister. And they are two high society women in an incredibly rich family. It's often said that they have infinite amounts of money, and they are horrible, horrendous, vapid, shallow people. They are the Kardashians of their day. And you also have, very much like Downton Abbey or Upstairs, Downstairs, you have the underclass as well. You have the servants living downstairs, headed up by their head butler, Peepers, played by Michael Ian Black. And he runs the downstairs, the servants' quarters, the cooks, the kitchen. He is the house butler. And this is very, very obviously going for that drunk history, the lewd aspects of the history. So
right, yeah.
It's very vulgar. It's very crass. It does some really, really risque material that made me raise my eyebrows a couple of times. Like, oh, really? You're going to go there? Because they do stuff that's essentially trying to put some modern issues through the lens of the time in comedy fashion. One of the early episodes, one of the house assistants, the under butler, there's a lady visitor to the house, and she rapes him. Except they don't call it rape in this universe; they call it ravishing. So he goes to the other servants at the quarters and goes, "Help me! I've been ravished." And they do the whole thing of, "You can't possibly be ravished. You're a man. How can men be ravished by women? Well, I'd be lucky if I was ravished by a woman like that." And so it sort of makes you suck your teeth a little bit and go, "Oh wow, you're gonna make fun of that? You're gonna go there?" Often quite successfully. It's absurdist humor. It's very, very silly. But one of the things about it is it sort of flits between humor so absurd that it's downright silly and you kind of roll your eyes at it. And every time you're sort of falling out with it, suddenly it does a punch with a line so good it'll have you crying. And I was watching this with my girlfriend, and I said to her, at the time, it's an odd show, because 1 minute you're watching it and thinking, okay, this is fairly entertaining, but there's nothing really, you're sort of starting to fall out with it. And every now and then it comes along with a line or a concept so good and so outrageous, it immediately endears you back into the show again. The problem is it's really sort of hit and miss. And when it hits, it's fantastically good. And when it misses, it's not terrible, but there's a little bit of, maybe you could have tried harder with that gag. Maybe you could have tried a bit harder with this show. There's some lovely ideas in here. The two sisters' husbands, married into the family for money, they're both gay and having a relationship with each other. Peepers, the house butler, who is so unbelievably up the family's arse, like he doesn't want the progressive era to come in. He's quite happy being the underclass butler. He's quite happy like putting food into their mouths as they spit it out onto the carpet. Yeah, it's really, really vulgar and crass, but there's the odd line in there where you think, okay, this is really good. In episode 1, there's actually a surprise appearance by Christina Hendricks.
Oh, wow, okay.
Who plays, she's one of the new housemaids that's brought onto the staff because she's fucking the patriarch of the Bellacourt family. But they instantly think that her name, Celine, is far too good for a servant girl, so they call her Chair instead, because that was the first thing they saw in the room when she walked in, and that'll do for you, girl. But she's essentially playing the family in that she's a prostitute that started fucking the patriarch, and she's now worming her way into the institution and getting more and more privileges, which causes upset between. So it's full of good ideas. Season 1, I thought, was quite successful in that there were enough punches in it to make really like endear me to the show. It's got this sort of sarcastic attitude towards the time. It's very brightly lit and overly absurdist, in very much the same way the drunk history stuff was. It's very bright and breezy, often with really, really heavy subject matter. But overall, season 1, I thought, actually worked. Season 2, unfortunately, that ratio of hit and miss became more misses than hits for me. It sort of struck me as a show that ran out of ideas much earlier than you think it would, and kind of used them all up in season 1. And that's a bit of a shame, Because right when I was getting into it, and I was looking forward to reviewing it on this podcast, thinking, oh, this will be a funny thing to talk about. I can talk about this silly gag over here, the lady of the house is a morphine addict, and all this kind of stuff. And there's so many really silly, stupid lines in it that are really, really quotable. And I'm thinking, okay, this could be an up and coming comedy that got killed in its prime. Actually, now having seen the whole thing, I can see why they killed it. It ran out of ideas.
That sucks.
And that's a shame. Season 1, I think, is worth watching because it is really, really funny at points. Like I said, my bad taste meter is, I have quite a high tolerance for that sort of thing. And it made me suck my teeth a few times in very much sort of a South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone kind of way. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they went for that sacred cow. I can't believe they did it with that. There's some gross out stuff in there as well, which I didn't mind. In the second, it just runs out of impetus. It runs out of verve. And yeah, it's just a bit of a wasted opportunity, really. There was a lot of potential there. It just, the writing just ran out of places to go.
Did it, in the second season, did it start to substitute the wit for broader humour?
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think it used up so many good witty lines, and they're brilliant lines, but it used them all up, and it didn't know where to go from there. And I think all of a sudden you can feel it beginning to struggle. And you can almost see the actors looking at each other. There's almost a meta kind of thing of looking at these actors, and you can almost see them try really hard to sell this material. Whereas in season 1, they didn't have to try hard to sell the material. It was so good, it just leapt off the page anyway. And so, yeah, a shame, really, a shame. But if you're looking for something funny late at night, I'd still say give season 1 a go. Just
don't bother with the rest.
It's kind of like bands and their first album and second album. I mean, the first album can be a bit ropey, and especially with comedy shows as well, to move the analogy back. With comedy shows, I always give the first season a bit more leeway, because you think about Parks and Rec or the US Office, or there's a load of comedy shows which in their first season aren't particularly funny, but there's enough there where you go, yeah, okay, so the genesis is there. In season 2, they're going to pick it up and turn it around. Those shows did. Very much like bands with their second album, though. If the first album's a bit ropey and then the second album's actually a little bit worse than the first album, your record label is going to drop you. And in TV terms, that's what happened to this show, and it's a shame. But yeah, I don't want to slate it too hard because I think there was some really good effort put in. Anyway, that brings me on to my trivia this week. This made for some interesting trivia, actually, because I did some research into the Gilded Age and the Progressive Age. And I found it interesting on Encyclopedia Britannica. They defined the Gilded Age as a period of gross materialism and blatant political corruption in US history from 1870 to 1900, presided over by a collection of colourful and energetic entrepreneurs who became known alternatively as captains of industry and robber barons. And so I thought I'd do a few of these. Some of these great titans. I'm calling this segment Titans of the Gilded Age, very pretentiously. Are you ready for some Titans of the Gilded Age trivia?
Shifty bastards.
Shifty bastards, yes. Yeah. The original shifty bastards. Let's start with the big one. John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, yes. He was like the richest American who ever lived, wasn't he?
One of them, yeah. This tycoon's father, William Avery Rockefeller, was a traveling snake oil salesman who posed as a deaf-mute peddler and hawked miracle drugs and herbal remedies. The smooth-talking huckster, dubbed Devil Bill, alternately fathered children, including the future industrialist, with his wife and mistress, the couple's live-in housekeeper. The itinerant William Rockefeller also lived a double life, posing as an eye and ear specialist named Dr. William Livingston, and in 1855 secretly married another woman. On September 26, 1855, a Cleveland merchant company, Hewitt and Tuttle, hired the teenage Rockefeller as an assistant bookkeeper. From that year forward, the corporate tycoon celebrated Job Day every September 26th to commemorate his entrance into the business world, and he considered the date more important than his birthday. Shortly after the discovery of petroleum in Titusville, Pennsylvania, the 24-year-old Rockefeller entered the fledgling oil business in 1863 by investing in a Cleveland refinery. In 1870, he formed the Standard Oil Company of Ohio, along with his younger brother William, through secret alliances with railroads, accumulating segments of the supply chain to achieve economies of scale, buying out and intimidating rivals, and serving the growing demand for quality kerosene. Standard Oil eventually controlled 90% of the refining capacity of the United States.
Jesus Christ.
Raised by a pious mother, Rockefeller tithed 10% of his earnings to his church from his very first paycheck. After retiring from Standard Oil in 1897, he stepped up his philanthropy and donated more than $500 million to educational, religious, and scientific causes. In 1913, America's first billionaire endorsed the Rockefeller Foundation, which had the ambitious goal to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. The foundation contributed to achievements such as development of a yellow fever vaccine and the successful eradication of hookworm disease in the United States. So I kind of like the fact that Rockefeller is known as one of those big old school corporate capitalist fat cat titans. But looking a bit into his life, he actually did do a hell of a lot for charity as well. He seemed like one of the few ones that, I'm not going to necessarily say he was a good person, but he had much more good in him than some of the other bastards on this list.
Good for him.
Speaking of bastards, shall we do Cornelius Vanderbilt?
Oh, yes, now this is a bastard.
Indeed. Shipping and railroad tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt was a self-made multimillionaire who became one of the wealthiest Americans of the 19th century. As a boy, he worked with his father, who operated a boat that ferried cargo between Staten Island, New York, where they lived, and Manhattan. After working as a steamship captain, Vanderbilt went into business for himself in the late 1820s and eventually became one of the country's largest steamship operators. In the process, the Commodore, as he was publicly nicknamed, gained a reputation for being fiercely competitive and ruthless. In the 1860s, he shifted his focus to the railroad industry, where he built another empire and helped make railroad transportation more efficient. When Vanderbilt died, he was worth more than $100 million. Despite his vast wealth, Cornelius Vanderbilt lived modestly. He never cared much for extravagance or high society. He was considered uncultured and vulgar, with an obnoxious grammar and illegible handwriting. All these factors apparently never bothered him. He had a reputation for being a ruthless businessman. He is known for quotes such as, "You have undertaken to cheat me. I won't sue you, for the law is too slow. I'll ruin you instead. If I had learned education, I would not have had time to learn anything else. And I don't care half so much about making money as I do about making my point and coming out ahead." What a lovely man he sounds like.
Yeah, very well-adjusted and down-to-earth.
Here's another nice little wrinkle of him. On December 19th, 1813, at the age of 19, Cornelius Vanderbilt married his 18-year-old first cousin, Sophia Johnson. This union was discouraged by his parents, but he did it anyway. The couple had 13 children. In 1868, Sophia died, and he felt her loss deeply as she was a smart businesswoman who consistently gave him sound advice and support in his various business decisions. At the age of 73, a year after Sophia's death, he married another of his cousins, Frances Armstrong Crawford. She was about 43 years younger than he was. Upon his death, he left about 95% of his wealth to his fourth child and oldest son, William Henry. He was the only child who paid attention to the business and whom the Commodore felt was capable of maintaining his empire. He shared the rest among his other children. So, 13 children with his first wife, 95% of his wealth to one child, and 5% to the other 12.
Jesus fucking Christ.
By all accounts, not a very nice man.
Nah, bit of a bastard.
Let's finish off here with probably one of the most well-known, J.P. Morgan.
Oh, yes.
John Pierpont Morgan was born into a prominent New England family on April 7th, 1837 in Hartford, Connecticut. His paternal grandfather, Joseph, was a founder of the Aetna Insurance Company, and his father, Junius, became a partner in a successful dry goods business around the time he married Juliet Pierpont, daughter of noted minister and poet John Pierpont. A sickly child who suffered seizures and other mysterious ailments, Pierpont, as he was known, spent long periods sheltered at home. When healthy, he frequented galleries and concerts with his parents, sparking a lifelong fascination with the arts. Initially a smart but indifferent student, he began showing improved grades by the time he attended English High School in Boston. In 1854, Junius Morgan moved the family to London to begin his new career as a partner in the banking firm of George Peabody and Company. Pierpont was sent to the Institut Sillig in Switzerland, where he became fluent in French and displayed an aptitude for mathematics, and then to Göttingen University in Germany. J.P. Morgan joined the banking business in 1857 following his father's footsteps. His father had already established the merchant banking firm Peabody in collaboration with George Peabody in the late 1850s. In the year 1871, Anthony J. Drexel became J.P. Morgan's mentor and collaborated in a partnership firm, Drexel, Morgan and Company. It was after the death of Drexel that the company was renamed as J.P. Morgan and Company. They established themselves as a powerful banking house, its special focus being the consolidation and reorganization of companies. J.P. Morgan had half of the railroads of the country under his control, in addition to his interests in 24 different companies that ran over 100,000 miles of track. The term Morganization became prevalent as Morgan took over troubled businesses, reorganized them, and set them on track to make profits. His interest in companies also encouraged the investors to make investments in these ailing businesses. It was Morgan who bailed out the US economy after the panic of 1903. He provided 3.5 million ounces of gold to the US Treasury to help during the financial crisis.
Flash bastards.
He actually bailed out the country. That's how rich he was. I got a few little facts about him here as well, just to finish off with. His private residence at 219 Madison Avenue was the first residence in New York to have electricity. It's suggested that rich Uncle Pennybags of Monopoly fame is modelled after Morgan.
I bet he fucking loved that.
He was the owner of the White Star Line, and he had his trip planned on the ill-fated ship Titanic, which famously, of course, sank after hitting an iceberg. Luckily enough, Morgan chose to cancel his trip and did not board the fated voyage. So lucky bastard all round, really, was old JP. This is a weird one. It was J.P. Morgan's uncle, James L. Pierpont, who wrote the popular Christmas carol, Jingle Bells.
Random.
That's one of those useless bits of trivia that's going to come in handy in a quiz one day, isn't it? Who wrote Jingle Bells? Why, it was the uncle of J.P. Morgan, of course. Hey, you say you don't learn anything from podcasts. And J.P. Morgan's founded company, which we now know as J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, is one of the 4 biggest banks in the United States and is also considered to be the universal bank with total assets amounting to, well, have a guess. So JP Morgan and Chase, how much do you think their total assets are worth?
I don't know, 20 billion.
$2.5 trillion.
Yeah, I thought I might have been lowballing it significantly there.
$1 trillion. It's absolutely insane. Amazing that the company that he founded continues to this day. That period of American history was so formative as to what we know America to be now. It's a really, really interesting mine of information.
It's funny because I actually looked up the other day just out of sort of a random impulsiveness. I typed an individual trillionaires. And the Google search came up with a page that said there's only been 6 trillionaires who have actually existed, and they were all like the first result was Genghis Khan.
Right, yeah,
So,
equivalent adjusting for inflation.
Ancient world rulers. So I wasn't actually aware that J.P. Morgan would have, his company would have amassed.
I seem to remember the American national debt is something around 3 trillion. So J.P. Morgan Chase and Company could wipe out almost all of the America's national debt. That is absolutely insane.
Why would they want to do a thing like that, though?
Anyway, we must get on with our premium podcast this week. This is the end of the free one, I am afraid. This week, we're going to talk about, you've got a documentary to review.
I do indeed, yeah. I'm going to be reviewing Harlan County, USA, which is one of the best documentaries ever made, quite easily.
And we're also going to be having a bit of a discussion. Well, we both decided to do a little streaming party this week, and we rewatched Scarface.
Love Scarface.
And it suddenly made us realise that Al Pacino is an actor that we've never actually gone into depth on.
Despite being really big fans.
I know, it's ridiculous, right? We've never got around to Al Pacino. So after Liam's documentary review, we're going to have a discussion of our favourite works of one Mr. Pacino.
Alfredo James Pacino.
Yeah, and I've got some trivia to finish off with on that as well. And yeah, we're just going to discuss his many, many great roles and perhaps a couple of the ropey ones as well.
Oh, no, I've got a couple of ropey ones and they are hilarious.
It's not been an entirely consistent career, no. But the early stuff's
good. But when it's shit, it's actually quite funny.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're interested in our premium content, please do check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page, or just type Cinementalist into Google. Please also follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast. And you can follow Liam at
the movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
And if you'd like to check out Liam's written musings as well, he posts them up on Twitter all the time. And also, if you go to cinementalist.com, there is a link to the Wacko Jacko blog where you can read all of them.
Come and have a gander at all of my typed musings and all the bollocks coming out, if you want.
Yeah, only if you want. No one's forcing you, man.
No pressure.
Yeah. You do what you like. Yeah. We're all anarchistic that way. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, guys. Hope to see you on the premium one, if not free one next week. Take it easy.